we quite understand what and how the staff must feel in that hospital. Trying to battle against and have low esteem, low morale, against a media that keeps telling you that actually what you were doing was wrong, what you were doing wasn't the care that you should be given. That must be a very, very hard task for those staff that work there. But no matter what, they are working there and they're doing the job. They're doing a very good job, but are not actually getting the credit that they deserve. UNISON, and I can speak for UNISON, has been a stalwart in actually supporting the campaign with Staffordshire. We do believe that Staffordshire should have its local hospitals. That's what it's there for. It was built up in the first place, the NHS, in 1948 for local people, and that's what it should do. I commend everybody that was part of that campaign to keep your hospitals going. I know about Cannock as well, and I always thought, you know, that should be kept as it is, as a general hospital, rather than being hived off to whatever services that they want to put it to. Well, I won't go on anymore, but I will introduce our candidates that are going to come here. Yes, we're going to come down on the stage, on this setting, and you're going to actually introduce yourselves. Yes, you have to have one of those. And then I will ask you some questions in regards to the health service and your take on it. And I'd need as well the campaign that you ran in regards to the 6 months that you had of the campsite. I'd like to know how that got started and where it's going to. Because that's an interesting thing, you know, because to think of that.
This could be a long story.
Oh, no, take as long as you want, because I want to hear it. I'm interested in how that came about and the idea of actually camping outside.
Nothing to do. I'm Julian Porter. Quite a few of you know me. I'm originally from Wolverhampton. Nothing to do with the healthcare. As I was explaining, there's no way I could be theatre now, so I just thought it would be the most horrific job for me. But I spent a lot of time in A&E because I've got 4 kids. And we moved to Stafford probably 18 years ago. And I had no interest in politics, no interest in it really in any particular area like health or anything like that. I have a child. I say they're not children anymore. My eldest is 19, and one 18. My daughter's just coming up 16. And 5 years ago and 7 months, my wife said to me she wasn't feeling very well. And we're blessed with a little lad, Leo, who came very quickly, 6 weeks early. And I go back a little bit. My daughter, stubborn as she is, she was born at Stafford Hospital, not quite technically. My wife's waters broke as she got out of the bath. We jumped in the car. We drove through passage, straight through the red light, straight through in the middle of the night, no traffic at all. Pulled up outside the reception at Stafford Hospital. Didn't go to A&E, stupidly. Ran into reception, which was manned overnight. Then I said to the lady in reception, I said, my wife's just about to have a baby in the car, and she said, every father comes in saying that, don't worry about it. And I said, no, seriously, she's about to have a baby. Anyway, the midwife comes down, who now turns out to be Glynis, who was retired and actually sat next to her in the campaign shop the one day. And it turned out, I said to her, what was the most interesting birth? She said, oh, one this night, this bloke came in, racing in his brand new car with his wife in the back. I came running down, I opened the door and I caught this little girl. And that was my daughter. I was round the other side, opening the other door, and as my wife's head came out, smacked off the wheel arch and then knocked her out. I had to push her back in, shut the door, came back round this side. And anyway, Glynis took the little one. My mother, I've got 3 brothers and my wife has got 2 sisters. And my eldest brother had a son, second eldest brother had 2 sons. I'd had 2 boys. My wife's sister had 2 boys, and their other sister had 1 boy, so there was like 8 boys. And we'd been told, suspected it was a boy that was coming. And we'd said to my mum, who had never been at any of the births, would you like to be there? Little did she know she'd be racing through Basich in front of the car, me, Stephen in, running in, all hell breaking loose. And Glynis catches this little baby. He says, "Oh, you've got a beautiful little girl." And my mum says, "Are you sure it's a girl?" And Glynis turns around and says, "I've been doing this job 45 years, I can pretty much assure you it's a girl." Anyway, brilliant. Stafford took her in, sorted out. They even said you could go home, you're not technically born in the hospital. Not so with the little one. My wife, I won't give her age away, but it was a bit of a shock when she found out she was pregnant. She just thought she was getting a little bit chubby, and then she said she wasn't feeling too good. And I went, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, remember when we had Zach?" "Oh no, I'm 48 now, so yeah, I was in my 40s, and I'm a toy boy, so you can imagine I'm not saying anything else." Anyway, she was very poorly, and she was in Stafford Hospital, and this was 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago. And I've got 3 of the children. I have to visit every day, and then one of the nights we were there, little one's heart rate drops. Panic stations about 12 o'clock at night. Within 15 minutes, anaesthetist to come up, caesarean section. Got this little bundle out. £4. I know, yes, it's like £4. I'm not doing it to you, I'm not, £4 comes out. He's absolutely gorgeous, he's fine. They take him to Scuba, they set him all in and put the bits on him. Cheryl's not so lucky, she's not very well for 6 weeks. She's in there, 6 weeks. Back and forth to work, looking after 3 kids, going in, and I only live a couple of miles from the hospital. Fine, never thought anything of it. I know we've been through some bad times. I told him my granddad, he lived with us, it was my wife's granddad, was in Stafford Hospital, in the so-called times that was poor care.
Yes.
Never did I see poor care deliberately given to my granddad. There was times when people couldn't get to him, and if I was there, I would give him a drink, or I'd get him to the toilet or whatever, because they were running around, and it was ridiculous, but it wasn't poor care. If he needed something, he would get it. I didn't see any poor care. So when this, this storm erupted about poor care, I couldn't understand exactly what it was going on. I didn't really take an awful lot of notice. I've got to be honest, I didn't. I didn't take an awful lot of notice of it. I just thought, well, we haven't had a bad care. I don't really understand this. I came home from work the one day, and my wife said to me, "I've had enough." And I went, "Oh, what have I done now?" She said, "I've had enough. They're closing our A&E overnight, and as I've said already, we've used the A&E lots, because our children have had, various sporting accidents or whatever. We've had, and Zach, my second eldest, had a heart problem, and he collapsed at school, and it was quite serious, but it turned out it was a regular heartbeat. Anyway, Birmingham, and it's brilliant. Everything's the NHS, I can't fault it at all." And my wife said to me, "I've had enough." I thought, "What have I done now?" She said, "No, they've closed the A&E overnight, I need to do something about it." And I was pleased to sit next to me, because it's a strange world. Karen, the worst house move I've ever had is, we live here, and we moved here next door, and it's about 30 yards, but you have to go all the way up this path and round the corner, so you couldn't hire a van. This is the lady that bought my house, my old house, and this is how I know her. She nearly didn't buy me a house, because I was getting a bit hacked off, actually. I was getting hacked off. I was getting really hacked off, because we'd accepted the bid, and it turned out there's a bit of a chain, and at the bottom of this chain there was a couple getting divorced, and there was going hammer and tongs, and they weren't having it. I said to Karen, I phoned her, I said, "Look, I've got a couple of first-time buyers, I've had enough." I said, they can do the deal next week. If you don't sort it out by tomorrow, deal's off. I didn't know her. Anyway, she dragged them all together, apparently, got all of these people into one room, knocked their heads together. Yes, I don't know what you did, I won't ask, but the deal was done the next day. So when Cheryl said, we need to do something about this, she rang Karen, and it was Cheryl and Karen and a lady called Sue Hawkins, whose husband works at the hospital, and another lady called Frances Melville, whose husband also works at the hospital, got together and started the Support Stafford Hospital campaign. This lady, and Cheryl and Sue have put in a massive amount of time and effort. Now I at the beginning was really just supporting them. When you start getting involved in something like this, and you meet nurses, we met some very special people that worked in A&E through those times, when they were left, like they said, it was like a war zone. When they're sitting there telling you, and they're in tears, you cannot be anything but affected by that. When they're telling you, like you said earlier, that they're doing their utmost to save people's lives, and then they are accused of poor care, when they were let down badly, and Stafford's been let down, and we're still being let down today. We're still being let down today. And something special happened in Stafford, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing some of your story as well, because that story is intertwined. It is intertwined. Something very special. All these people here were undoubtedly involved. We decided we were going to march for our hospital, and it started from something small, and we put out posters. We spent the nights, so we took the kids out, and we took our next door neighbours out, and they thought it was great. They'd covered themselves in camouflage. We got stopped down Greyfriars by the police at 1 o'clock in the morning because we were carrying a ladder. And they went, there's been a report of some youths carrying a ladder. And it appears one of our next door neighbours, lads with his face camouflaged. We got away anyway. That's great, carry on. We put all these posters up, we leafleted, we went to villages, we went to Rugeley and posted, we leafleted thousands of people. We rang the newsletter and said, look, would you put a poster up saying there's a march? It took us a long time to get the newspapers to stop, to understand that the people in Stafford were sick and tired of them attacking our hospital. You're not going to sell newspapers, keep attacking our hospital. You've got the wrong mood. The mood has gone the other way. People want support. So we rang the newsletter and I said, will you put a poster in advertising the march? People will rip it out and put it in their windows. Oh no, we can't possibly do that. So I rang the Express and Star. I said, would you put a poster in your newspaper and advertise the march? It's a great way. They'll put it in their windows, or they'll put it on a van and they'll bring it to the march. Express and Star said no. So I rang the newsletter back and said, Express and Star said it's great, they're going to put a poster in. I suggest you might want to do it. They went, if the Express and Star are doing it, we better do it. So I rang the Express and Star back and said, the newsletter putting a poster in, you better do it. You don't want to be left out. Don't want to be left out, you better put a poster in. I was thinking, yes, this is great. So yes, this happened. And we were really nervous. We'd sold loads of t-shirts, which was a great sign. It was fantastic. I think it was Rowan's idea, it was red and white. I'm sure it was because he's an Arsenal fan. But these red and whites, no, I'm only joking, but red and white t-shirts, and they were great. And people were getting involved in it, and it was, and then somebody came up with the idea we wanted an NHS blue, so we put ribbons all at Sue, so we put ribbons all around this little ribbon around that, and we put it all around the town, and people started, what's all these ribbons about? What's all these ribbons about? You know, what, is it Conservative? Is it an election? No, it's NHS blue. And my wife and Karen, we were up till 2 or 3 in the morning, and lots of other people in here that are doing posters and banners. And we came into town, and as we drove into town, we started seeing people walking into town. I thought, oh, there's a few people. You know, it looks like we're going to be alright, it's a lovely sunny day. And we came around the back and we parked by the back of the church, because I've been driving in there, and I brought some more banners in, and there was loads of people in the shop, and I thought, this is really quite busy. And somebody said to Cheryl, you need to go out the front. Cheryl said, I don't want to go out the front because there's nobody there. And we walked through Guildhall, and we stepped out, and my God, you couldn't step out because the square was full. To the right was full, to the left was full. And one of my favourite pictures of somebody's, I don't know which hotel, from the hotel, they'd taken a picture, and the whole town was full. And I went and drove back out because I got some more posters and banners. And I drove out to by Asda, just up here where the grounds were. And the nurses had started walking down, and we'd asked them to be in their uniform, and they were going, no, people spit at us, we don't want to be in our uniform. And then they decided they were going to be in their uniform, and then the management said they couldn't be in their uniform, and then we found the management said, how dare you, you know, they're not stupid. Oh, it's hygienic reasons. Don't be silly, they're not going to go back to work in their uniforms that they're marched in, they're not stupid. They walked, and there was 400 or 500 of them on the side anyway. I went running up to this lady I know really, really well, and I kissed her on both cheeks. I went, Sarah, Sarah, it's brilliant to see you. She's a midwife. And she went, I'm not Sarah, I'm her twin sister. Identical twin, and she said, so I never even met her sister, and it was fantastic. It was a bit embarrassing, but it was fantastic. We gave all those posters out, and then we went to walk, and I didn't walk. I didn't march because I was taking people that couldn't march. I got a minibus and I drove round the other way, and all the traffic was stopped. And I got a nurse that had worked, and she's in her 80s now, and she wanted to walk, and she wasn't fit enough, but she wanted to be there. And we picked her up and brought her in and took her back out again. And we got up to the hospital, and I walked back down, and I could not believe it. It was the most momentous thing I've seen. They came, and there was thousands, and they kept walking and marching and marching and marching, and you were on the radio, and the police were estimating, and they go, oh, it's 10,000, 12,000, 16,000, 20,000, 40,000, and then in the end they gave up because they were just, it took hours for everybody to get up to the field. And that just stated to me, everybody in the area came. UNISON were there, we had people coming from Kidderminster and Bridgnorth and Birmingham, and staff came from Walsall and staff came from Wolverhampton, and it was like a release. The staff were going, we've been put under all this pressure, and exactly what you said, there's been a massive campaign against the NHS, and Stafford was picked out, because of the problems we've had in the past. They must have thought, well, we can do this, we can downgrade this hospital quite easy, because nobody will want it kept open. Nobody in that town, they all want it shut. They're not interested. The staff, you know, the staff morale will be rubbish, we'll get rid of them. And then suddenly all these people stood up, and we've only got 70,000 people in the town, and we've got 270,000 catchment area. But to get 50,000 people to walk through a sleepy town in Staffordshire was absolutely phenomenal. It was a brilliant day, it was a fantastic day. And when I was summoned up to Maggie Oldham's office when we camped on the field, chief executive at the time, to ask, actually as it turned out, she was very helpful, and she said you need to use the toilets, but can you get portable ears, etc. But as I walked in, she got a picture of that march, and she said that was the best day of my life. Now for somebody to say that, and the nurses to say that, and Heather, an A&E nurse, to say that was the best day, the best feeling in my life, then we achieved something. Now if everything else is lost, that day we'll live. We will live forever. And that's down to the people of this town, the people that put an awful lot of effort in. I remember, and I'm going on, I remember when we went to start petitions and it was snowing, and I didn't know any of these people in this campaign. And Rowan was there, and Rowan was there reflecting, it was snowing, it was bloody freezing, we were there all day. And that day, not one person came up to me and said, oh, the hospitals, I've had terrible care, it's awful. Over the next few days, I did get some people saying, I have experienced poor care, you know, I wasn't happy with my so-and-so's care, but I don't want to lose my hospital. I've never met anybody that has agreed with downgrading our hospital. Now, if there's 50,000 people and everybody else, the signatures we got, why are they downgrading our hospital? There's no logical reason to it. That's why I've become, I don't know if the word's politicised or whatever, why we got involved in the campaign, mainly on the coattails of my wife and these ladies, I support them. But we have come up against a massive, what we class as a machine, a government machine. We have come up against everything. And every time we've come up with an argument, every time we've come up and fought them, they've put everything against us. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, why on earth would you spend £250 million in Stoke, add on to that 35 million in Wolverhampton to extend their A&E, 15 million to Walsall A&E, only a couple of million, poor old Burton only got a few million, but because we closed our A&E overnight, On average, 14 or 15 people used our A&E overnight. How could Wolverhampton, Walsall and everywhere else suddenly be inundated to the tune that they need 35 million in Wolverhampton? Every time I read the Express and Star, the new cross is full because of all the people from Staffordshire. They're not full from people from Staffordshire, they're full because the whole of the population's increased. They took 25 A&Es away when they should have been putting 15 more A&Es in. You know, and then so they spent 250 there. So in total, in the health economy in this area, they have pumped over £300 million into this health economy to centralise services and do what they want to do. They're looking at selling Eurostar. They want 300 million for Eurostar. They've managed to find, they're thinking, great, we're going to put the 300 million towards a deficit. They've just spent £300 million in here they didn't need to spend. Mid-staff's had a deficit of £8 million. If they want to spend 250 million, they could have kept mid-staff for the next 30 years with that sort of money. That's not common sense. That's not reality. And if you've got people in the room and you said to George Osborne, oh, can you give me 250 million quid so I can put it into Stoke Hospital and build some porter cabins and a couple of extra theatres? He'd go, you mental? And that's what they've done. They've built some porter cabins to take the extra pressure, and then they're going to close our emergency services surgery next week, so our A&E, and you'll know it, won't be an A&E. And yet the propaganda states that we're doubling the size of our A&E. That's because they're knocking walls down and they're going to put a coffee shop in the corner because there's nothing else in there. They are saying that double the size of the A&E and they're taking away emergency surgery. And there's one thing that I would say is that's a lie, and that's dangerous. It's a lie to say that we have a proper A&E. It's false and people don't realise it, but if you've got, you need a bone pinning, or you've got a dislocation, anything that's manipulation, you say, oh, I've learned these things, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've learned. Or if you've got a stomach pain and you think it was appendicitis, you won't go to Stafford. Stoke, and I'm again going to go through everything you're going to go through, because Stoke has the worst performing A&E in the country, and that's not a slight on the staff. That's not a slight on the staff at all. That is the fact, because they can't get them out of the moment because they've shut so many beds. They built a hospital with 100 less beds that cost absolutely millions with a PFI. Stoke can't get any more in. So what do? Without any more capacity, you close your nearest A&E. They've been diverting ambulances back to our hospital for weeks now. Last Saturday, they had 2 every hour coming back in to Stafford, and they'll deny it. You'll speak to them, they'll deny it. But when you're in the ambulance service, they won't deny it. They'll say, no, that's a fact. That's absolutely a fact. But Mr. Hackett, Mr. Bowden, will look you in the face and tell you something that you know is red, and they'll tell you it's blue. Or a different, slightly different colour, either red, I don't know. But then, so I'm not happy. I'm not happy with the merry dance that we've been led. I'm not happy with the politicians using Stafford for their own
thing that I kind of agree
and
with
I have nothing to do with, like I say, politics. My dad was a journalist. He was a journalist, and so therefore supposedly we would have had a middle class upbringing, but for the fact that my dad had playing football, crashed his head in when I was probably 5, so we lost everything. We lived in a council house in Goodyear Avenue in Wolverhampton. My dad got better, never the same. When I was 2 days after my 12th birthday, my dad worked for the Birmingham Post Evening Mail. He'd just been made up to sub-editor, just gone through not long before. He was chaplain of the union, and they had a strike and had been out for months, and again we'd got no money. Every sort of savings we'd got, my dad had got holes in his shoes, and I remember 2 days after my birthday, I was 12, 2 days after my birthday, the last memory I have of my dad was coming out of the bedroom because he was late for work again, and he worked nights, but he needed to be in early. And I was standing at the bottom of the stairs, and I had a pair of football boots for my birthday. My first proper ones, I used to get them from Woolies, but these were my first proper ones. I'd gone to Jimmy Mullins or Ron Flower Sports or something, and and I was taking him to school. It was my first PE lesson with my football boots. My dad was at the top of the stairs, start bollock naked, which wasn't the best sight in the world, because it was a bit out of the way. Anyway, I got to school, and he went to catch the train to Birmingham, and he'd been diagnosed with angina, and he'd been told not to he shouldn't have been working really, but he was waiting for results. And he ran for the train, and he'd had a heart attack on the train in front of a doctor actually, who tried to save him, and obviously he had a massive heart attack, and he didn't save him. What I'm trying to say is that when I left school, I did my A-levels at college, and while I was doing my A-levels, I did some window cleaning, and the company that I was working for, there was some problems there, and the main guy said, I'm just taking the profitable bits and I'm losing the rest, and I'm making everybody redundant. And I was 18 and I could drive, and I was driving the van. And the lads that were working there, was a 25 and a 30-year-old, they'd been doing it for a long time. I said, look, ideal opportunity. They said, no, we didn't want to do it. And I was doing my A-levels part-time. And I was got then, which was a scheme where you got 40 quid a week. It was to try and, you could apply for. So I applied for this scheme and get 40 quid a week to try and set this business up. So I did. I said, look lads, I'll set up the business, I'll buy a van. I got this enterprise allowance, it was called, 40 quid a week. Took these two lads on with me, and we did this window cleaning round, and it wasn't like, we did houses, but I remember we were doing like crematoriums, and we were up at Gornal Crem, and we got the ladders up, and we said to the chap, we said, there's no funerals coming in, is there? He went, no, nothing booked in. He looked on the wrong bloody day. We were on the top of the ladder, there's this funeral quotation, comes in, right, we're trying to get down the ladders, like, you know. There was some good times, but I remember going out with my mates, and they were all at uni or whatever, they were doing jobs, and we come out of this nightclub in Wolverhampton, and I got them all in the back of this van. Obviously no seatbelts in them days, and I'd been dropping them all off. Rolled Paddy, the one of the drunks, so rolled him out the back as he stepped backwards and flew over the hedge. I just remember that, and I thought, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm 19 years old. What am I doing? I've got to be up in an hour. Yeah. So I took the decision that I'd sell it, and I sold it to the lads that worked for me, and I went off to Australia. And just travelled for a while, and then when I came back, I got some ideas from there. So I did actually, when I got back, I was doing some ducking and diving, a bit of selling T-shirts and stuff, and it was brilliant. Eventually, my mother said to me, "I think you need to get a proper job." So I went and applied for various jobs, and I got a trainee job in Primark. I never heard of them. Primark. What a dump. What a dump. Honestly, I went to Derby. Did my training there, it was a dump. It was packed, they had everything off the shelves, it was packed, they'd only got 19 stores at the time. Anyway, I did really quite well, I was enjoying it, I was only 20. Sent me down to Brighton. Brilliant, Brighton, fantastic. Big, massive store, And I've got a flat in Howell. Beautiful place, but I was in this basement flat, really damp, no bigger than it was just one room, and it was minute, and it was 400 quid at the time, which would be equivalent to like £1,200 now. It was ridiculous, it was crazy. It was most of my money, and I got a car, sold my car, bought a speedboat. Don't know why, don't ask me, bought this speedboat, attitude. And so, on my day off, like on a Tuesday, because the beach was there, I'd go out on my speedboat, you know, and try and teach people to do it, because I did always do it. And I put up this one day, and sitting on the beach, and I parked it up, and there's a little kid there with his mum, he goes, "Mum, there's a speedboat." And she went, "Yeah, people like that, they don't work." And I thought, oh, I'm in Primark down the road. Anyway, I had to sell a boat, because they transferred me to Cardiff, and I got to Cardiff. And this is when Primark started to take off. They planned a load of money into this big new store, beautiful store. I think we did about 160 grand on the Saturday, the first day. It was mental, you know, it was just crazy. And it went really well. And I tell you why I got promoted to Cardiff. They've got the children's department on the first floor. And there's 19 stores, and Brighton had the worst. It was 19th performing store for children's wear. It was their biggest store, and you're thinking, why is it not number one? When I got there, well, it was upstairs. They haven't got a lift. No parents going to, they're trying to get up there. It was a nightmare. So I said to the guy down the bottom, I said, can I take like just 20 feet of your department? He said, yeah, that won't bother me. He wasn't particularly interested. And I put all the good kids stuff and all the sales stuff down the front. And we went from 19th within 2 weeks to first. And obviously somebody spotted it. And you know what's going on. Quickly to promote to Cardiff. From Cardiff, they sent me and gave me my own store in Bolton. What a nightmare. I'm from Wolverhampton. Bolton. It's tough. Jesus, it is tough, honestly. I'm in there, and this lady comes in. I've only been there a week, a couple of weeks. Lady comes in, Monday morning. She picks up a pair of shoes, because it's a cheap shop, they have them in pairs. So she took the pair and went. I'm watching her, she walks out, and when I get outside, I went, excuse me, madam, I do believe you left the store without paying for something. And she went, you don't know who I am, do I? I went, I don't really care who you are, come back in, please. Got her in the office, and the girl says to me, you don't know who she is. I said, look, I don't really care who she is. No, she's an pair of shoes, I'm not having this, you know. We're going to stop this. This store's losing money. You know, and anyway, get the police, and when the police come in, he goes, you don't know who this is, do you? I went, if anybody else says to me, you don't know who this is. I said, what's going on? He went, didn't you read the Sunday People yesterday? I went, no. He said, this lady's HIV positive and has reckoned to have slept with 10,000 men in Bolton. I went, oh. Yeah, anyway, the local newspaper rings me up. I believe you're the man that has arrested this lady that slept with 10,000 men who's HIV positive. And I said, yeah. So that was my claim to fame in Bolton. But as it was, obviously she got problems, they let her go. Wasn't so clever the next week. We had 2 lads that came in, grabbed a load of stuff, went out. We got them stopped. I came out to see my car, which I'd bought after I told my beloved boat I had to buy a car, to find that every single panel got a scratch in it, and they folded up my windscreen wipers in half. Because I parked it in the manager's spot, hadn't I? Stupidly, manager at Primark. Thought I was So I learned an awful lot from Primark, but stupidly, I didn't stay with them, because probably now I might be sitting on the board earning a fair bit of bob, because they've gone absolutely massive. What I'm trying to say is that I've come from, after that, I did go into my own businesses, and so I'm coming from a background where it's a mixed background. I've gone through, you class me as a capitalist. I got my own company, I suppose. I had a company that I sold. We had 30 staff in Birmingham. I've worked in retail, so I've worked serving people. And I've come from, my mum was she was a lunchtime supervisor, and she worked in retail. And then when my dad died, she went out to work, and she became, later in life, she was a social worker, assistant social worker, not qualified, working with the elderly. And yes, I've come from a background where my mum, she'll always tell you, she's got Parkinson's now, she's doing all right, but she went down to Greenham Common. She said to me, look, if I don't come back tonight, there's some stuff in the freezer. She says,
so you come from an activist background?
Well, it became an activist background. Yeah. Not when my dad was there, obviously, but my mum got involved, and then she went down to Greenham Common, and she was handing the cutters, and she goes, she thinks, well, if I've got 4 kids at home, because I've got 3 kids, 4 kids at home, if I get arrested, so it's like past the next person, then it was passed back to her, then she cut a bit, and then they cut a bit. And she did, she came back that night. And we got interested in a bit of politics that way. And we did, I do remember me and my brother went up to Leicestershire, there was nuclear bombs or something, and we went up with the local C&D group, because they used to bring the trains through Wolverhampton at one point, or the road convoys or something, I can't remember. But they used to bring them through, and so they've got these cruise missiles. Yeah. And they'd come round. Anyway, we went up to, they were supposed to, Americans were building a base and they were coming in. So we get to this base, and there's only about 12 of us. So what we're going to do? Better line the road. So we line the road, sit in the road, we're sitting there like this. And this removal man comes up. Sorry, man. Yeah. This removal man comes up, and we won't let him in. He says, well, mate, just pick us up. We're not stopping. Anyway, next thing you know, the police come, pick me up, because I was only skinny and light. Literally chucked me over the hedge Mr. Phil picking up through me. Mr. Phil, next thing you know, people are lads next to me, and the next person. They're just throwing us over the edge. Run back round, sat in the road again, back over the other edge, just like this.
So you've always been some kind of protester in some respects?
In a minute part of my life, most of my life, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I must go back to that,
Yeah.
because for the rest of that time I've worked, like I say, from the age of 25 up till, for 20 years I've been involved in building companies and selling them, so I've gone full circle, and then getting up this now and doing the camp. You want to know the little camp?
That's how the camp. Well, you've given us a very good picture of you and the background, and in how you've come into it. So you've shown that you're an activist, really. So this isn't quite as new as you think. So
it's taken me back to when I was 16. I think.
Yeah.
But I never thought about that till I sat here and spoke
yeah,
about it.
because you all those things that you did, that is part of that. So let's get to the camp now. How was that came about? Because that's what I want to know.
Okay, we've got a Facebook group, and I never did Facebook before. I don't know, but we ended up doing a Facebook group, and I was admin on it, and we'd gone for a judicial review, and we lost that, and we heard that, that was pretty much a low point. And it was Friday night, I was sitting in the kitchen, and it was a nice week, and my little lad on a Tuesday night, because I was off on the Wednesday to get there for the week, he said to me, "Dad, can we camp out?" And I said, yeah, we can camp out. And he got a little wigwam, and this wigwam was only about so wide and this wide. So we slept out, but I got off my legs out, you see. But it was a lovely night, so it wasn't a problem, and he loved it. Anyway, I think it was Friday or Saturday night, he said, "Dad, can we camp out again?" I said, "Yeah, but the weather's going to be terrible." He says, "Well, can we build a tent in the garden?" I said, "Okay." So we got some little football posts, and I got, one of the cameras, and I chucked it over the football post. It was brilliant, look like a tent. He said, "Dad, that's brilliant, that's brilliant." He's only 4 years old at this point. Yeah, 4. And he said, "But we need a door, we need a proper door." So I went in the garage, and all I could find was a sheet that said "Save Stafford Hospital" on it, from the march that had been left over, and I put it over the front, and he goes, "Dad, that's great." And I went, "This looks quite good here." And I took a picture of it, and I went inside and onto Facebook, which, at the time, I think it was about 4,000 people on it, and I posted on it. I sat there, pulled myself out, and I posted on it, and I put, "I've had enough, it's been a terrible week, really don't know what else we can do," something along those lines. So I've decided I'm camping at Stafford Hospital. I pitched up at Stafford Hospital. Facebook just went, whoa, it went alight. It did, it went alight, and next thing you know, "Oh, that's a brilliant idea, it's a fantastic idea, fantastic idea, fantastic idea." And I'm thinking, they actually think, some of them picked on and I wasn't there, but they actually think I'm down there, and I'm killing myself laughing. And anyway, then I thought, oh no, some people might turn up, and next thing you know, the phone goes, "Julian, where are you?" I went, "Well, I'm in the kitchen having a glass of wine, where are you?" And Edge, the Conservative councillor, "I'm on a wet field outside Stafford Hospital. You're not effing here, are you?" I went, "No." She went, "Chris Bannon," who was the independent, "she's just rung me, told me you were down that field. I've come here down to give you this, but I've got out of the bath and I've put my dirty knickers back on." And I've raced down there and you're not here. And I was killing myself on the floor by that point. I really was literally on the floor. And then I said, "And I'm really sorry, come and have a glass." "Oh, I'm not having a glass of wine with you, I'm going home," like this. Anyway, that wasn't the worst of it, because then I picked up from some messages going on from the other people. Jeff Small, stalwart, where does he live?
2.5 miles.
2.5 miles. He got his rucksack, didn't he? Got his rucksack and his tent. He'd walk down. He doesn't have a mobile phone in. He'd walked all the way down to the hospital. Spent his time looking around all the field and the bushes. Realised that I was obviously joking. And walked back home. Anyway, I felt really guilty about this. And I rang Jeff. I messaged him and then rang him at home and said, "Jeff, I really do apologise that it wasn't meant that way." He said, "No, Julian, it's not a problem." He said, "But I do find a problem that we aren't doing enough, but really some direct action would go. So I said to Jeff, I said, look, we should do it then, and the next Friday, so like I was saying, it was Leo's fault really, I just blamed him, it was his fault. I said, let's go and pitch up. So we did, we went down there.
So has it been 6 months? Have I got that right?
It's more than 6 months now. July the 18th,
right.
We went down there and I put a message on saying if you want to do some action on Facebook, please message me and I'll give you the information about what's happening. The Twitter team, the Twitter guys put it out there, right? And it was my mobile was on it, which I didn't mind, it was my mobile. I'm working in Wolverhampton, the phone goes, this is Chief Superintendent, blah blah, West Midlands Police here. You're trending on Twitter. Can you please tell me what the hell's going on and how many people you think are going to turn up at this demo? I said, well, I was expecting about 12. He said, it's been retweeted 30,000 times. Yeah, that's something ridiculous. Anyway, I said, no, I can assure you. He said, well, you're responsible if it goes wrong. You know, what's going on? I said, well, we're going to camp the night, just the night. Right, I know we turned up, and quite a number turned up. And I said, right, we'll pitch in. There's a big metal pole right in the middle. I thought, that looks, we can go round it, sort of thing. You know, it looks like a central point, and I pitched mine right next to the bank, which is the best thing I've ever done because we haven't been blown away. And we're sitting there, and we've got a couple of gazebos, and I think the Labour group and UNISON giving us gazebos and stuff, and we set them up. We'd only got a couple at the time. And we're sitting there, and then suddenly the storm clouds come in. And the next thing you know, the biggest thunder and lightning storm arrives, and I'm thinking, wasn't such a good idea to pitch right around a big metal pole. And that was the first night. And so we stopped the first night, and the next night the weather was a bit better, and we stopped 2 nights. And then it was 3, and then we thought, well, we'll see how it goes. And the press were coming. And that was the idea. It was the point of the camp was to demonstrate to people that we were that hacked off, and we wanted to highlight. We're trying to get national press, because this demonisation of the NHS gets national press. You know, it's led by certain newspapers. When you're trying to point out something, it's very difficult to get the other story back across, and that was the idea of it. Jeff's Hall, the original one, he's done close to 200 nights. We're up to 200 nights this weekend roughly, and there's been people down there that have done the days. There's people like Paul over here who's been there virtually every day. Sue Bennett up there that's camped. You know, there's people who supported it. You know, it's been from young to old. In the summer it's great because all the kids are there, and then obviously as the schools have gone back, the older people have made sure that it stayed. It's easy for me. I say it's easy for me because I go to work. If I'm finished early, I'll go and have my tea, go down to camp. I go to bed, I get up early and go. There's other people there that camp night and day, and they're there all day long, and it's freezing cold, and we've had snow, we've had -3, 4, 5, and they stuck it out. And they stuck it out because each time we're going, oh look, if we can get to this date, then we'll get this coverage, and it happens because there's certain dates on the way. Have decided today that we can't do anything when we're down there. We haven't got any of these people that can still come because it's become a community. We didn't know any of these people before. It's become a community, and all these people that come in have got so many skills to offer. We've got people that do freedom of information. We've got people that do masses of Twitter. We've got people that collect real good stories, and all of those things together has made the campaign. And it's not meant to be like that. It hasn't been organised in that respect. It's not like a company, but they've all taken upon their own responsibilities, and all of that make it is a massive campaign. And that's why Support Stafford Hospital has been, I think, a very successful campaign, because it's been across party, it's been across politics, and a lot of people have given up a massive amount of time. Certain councillors have given up a massive time. Certain people that have given far and above and beyond to the point where they've made themselves ill, and they've done that because they care for the staff, because they care for our services, because they care for the NHS, because they care that people are going to suffer because those services aren't there. They've done that. So we've decided that we would as independents for the council. We can't stand, Karen thankfully has stood as, as an MP. We can't stand for county council, who people would really like to get to at the moment because there's no elections. So we've decided that we would stand as independents, and I've decided I will stand as an independent. We want to do something slightly different now. We want to get the people of the town to participate. It's brilliant these people have turned out tonight, but we need to get the decision making and the politics and the opportunity. They might not take it, but the people of the town showed that 50,000 people showed that they wanted to keep their services to the hospital, and that should have been listened to. It's not the council's fault that that hasn't been listened to, it's the government's fault that's been listened to it. But we can only start where we can start. So if we start from the ground and move up, if we can bring in some democracy into the council, then this is what we're suggesting. We're suggesting that if we put a candidate in each ward, apart from the wards that those councillors have gave us the support, we won't stand against those particular councils, okay, because they have shown that they have great character, that they've got the right. They've taken it on their conscience, even if it's going to be against possibly their parties. Obviously, certain parties are in government, and their council is that, you know, this Conservative council, and that might have gone against what they wanted. And then obviously we've got the people like Roger, who absolutely stood up for the hospitals. Howell. They're the people that we wouldn't stand against. But the rest of them, there's 59 councillors that have been in this town, and I'm sorry, there's only 3 or 4 of them that have actually put themselves out to the point to try and save services. Now, I'm not just talking about services at the hospital, which is paramount. It's youth services. It's the fact that, you know, the libraries. There's areas that the Borough Council can't do anything about, but they should be putting pressure on the county council as well. And health scrutiny committee, right? People like Rowan has educated himself on that. But if we're going to scrutinise health, and we're sitting there in a meeting, the County Council Scrutiny Committee meeting, which is the other Monday, and they are asking questions. Okay, Mr. Hackett, what's your deficit for last year? What's your deficit going to be for this year? And when he turns around and says, oh, we're going to break even, and the person, oh, that's really good, yeah. Oh, sorry, and we're all going, hey, what are you talking about? You're 16.9 million in the red, and you know, you're not going to break even. But the person there didn't have the knowledge or never looked into it to actually go back to, hang on a second, it says here you're 16.9 million in debt. Why are you taking our emergency services away? Why is it safe that when you've got the worst? None of that was scrutinised properly by county council. They just passed everything and said, yeah, all these services are correct. That's not right. So we want to have some more input into that. Now the thing is, there's expenses there for people that attend meetings. If they don't attend the meetings and do the job properly, they shouldn't get paid that money. That money could be used to getting people, if I don't know, if I could have brought you along, if I got a problem, somebody's come to me and said, we think theatre's wrong, the emergency surgery is unsafe at Stafford, all right, or at Stoke or somewhere. Okay, would you mind coming along to the meeting? I'll sort you out your expenses. I will need you sitting next to me so I can ask this person here, is this right, is this right? And I can turn to you and you can say, what would you think of that? You know, you're a specialist. Therefore, that should be, you should be scrutinised an awful lot more. So,
and that's who you've got, actually. You've got individuals who are specialists in whatever area within the NHS who can actually guide you in that respect.
Yeah,
I am a little bit concerned because I do understand about confidentiality as well. I mean, and also because that could be an issue with somebody like myself who is actually a staff governor, and we get covered by confidentiality. Right. So it wouldn't be so easy to actually, or in that respect. Do you know what I mean?
There is not a shortage of expert healthcare people out there that want to do a job because, you know, they bring them into Stafford and they tell us, you know, this isn't safe, that isn't safe, and so if you had, for forensically looked to the amount that we've looked at what has gone on at Stafford Hospital, where the TSA, the Trust Special Administrators, accountants brought in, supposedly with medical experts, who then go, right, we need to change these services because it's unsafe.
Yeah, usually those individuals, and I'm not coming across you, haven't actually worked in those areas, haven't been part of those services. Do you know what I mean?
Take the words out of my mouth.
They're not actually, they're experts of whatever, and not necessarily health people as well, but they come in and it's a tick box exercise,
Correct.
as we know.
They will give the answers that these people want. So it's a it's predetermined. It's already gonna, it's happened. There's no this consultation rubbish. They never consultated. They just told us what was going to happen, and that was going to be it. It was a waste of money. We wasted another 13 million.
So that's what your idea of getting, and is it very focused on the NHS?
No.
I noticed you had mentioned about the others as well.
This is why it's different. I am going to represent my borough. Okay, and this modern age, my ward, sorry, my ward. I will represent my ward. If I get voted in,
no, the world.
You just went to Jepson. The way it's going to work, right, I perceive it to work. The idea behind it is that, dead simply, and I know it's not, I'm being simplistic, right, and I know is that, I'm representing Brockton, say, I live in Brockton, I'm representing Brockton, and they suddenly decide that, oh, it'd be better if we had a bypass and it's going to go straight through Brockton. And I'm thinking, well, it's going straight through my house, actually. They're going to give me a bit of extra compensation. That'll be all right for me. So I argue to my votes, the people in my ward, I think it's a great idea that the road goes through Brockton because it's better for the town, whatever. I come up with my own ideas. The people of Brockton then have an opportunity on the Monday, I say, the vote's on the Friday. You've got all week to let me know which way you would vote. Now, obviously, the people of Brockton are going to vote, no chance, we don't want something coming through here. So 700 then vote no, 100 vote yes. Though I want to vote for it, I have to go with that. They are representing them. Now, this is what I find, so when you get to Westminster, and we say to our MP, we don't want you to vote for the Health and Social Care Act. We don't agree with it. It's absolutely terrible. It's a 3-line whip. They then have to go, they can't vote on their conscience, they can't vote the way they think the town should tell them, So they go in, and they vote the way, so what's the point? What's the point of having an MP that represents nobody but his party? And I know you say you vote for the party, but no. He's representing this community, and he should therefore vote on the way this community wants. We can quite easily gather how many people want, how many people feel that they don't want the Health and Social Care Act. Even better, locally, if we have people taking part in politics. It's been shown in Scotland, we should have 16-year-olds voting, and we should have everybody, and it's quite easy in the modern day to be able to, on a Monday, put a question, and by Friday, have the feeling of that town, or that area, or that ward, of how that people should vote, and we should be representing them. We can argue all day.
And that's something it's democratic representation, and that's what I think is lacking in this country.
Okay, can we come into you now?
Sorry, thanks so much, mate. I might as well just become Karen's campaign.
Yeah, because at the moment, Karen, I believe you're standing as an independent. Is it independent for
National Health Action
for the National Health Party? And you have the very similar ideas to.
Sorry, do you want Kathy's now? Because I don't really
to at the moment. So if you can explain your.
That's the longest I've heard, Julian.
Is it?
Yeah, it's been really interesting.
Excellent. Yeah. People talk to me.
You sound amazing.
Well, I don't know your history.
Yeah. Right.
Who's that?
Oh, sorry, let me just turn this off at the moment when you...
Yeah, is that... So, Do I give my full history or?
I think you need to give us a background because you are a nurse. I spoke to you and you said you were a nurse as well. And if you could just tell
basically,
how
I mean, people who have got to know me know that there's certain things that are like red flags to me. And one of them is when I see unfairness and injustice. And that stems a very long way back to when I was 17. Basically, I was brought up mainly abroad, and I was in developing countries. My father originally was with the army, and then he was with the diplomatic service. Now that sounds very grand, but actually my father came from Stoke, my mother from Wolverhampton. My father, there we go, you didn't know that, Julian. But my father came from, you know, we were working class, the family was. But he became a butcher's boy, then was in the potteries, worked in the potteries. And then when the war started...
Is that mine?
No, that's yours.
Basically, can everyone hear me all right? Yeah. Basically, so he was butcher's boy, worked in the potteries, and then the war came along. So he then sort of got enlisted, and he trained as in the glider pilot regiment. And so my father's, you know, one of my icons, the person you look up to. But he went into the glider pilots and trained, and he went into the Battle of Arnhem and became a prisoner of war there. And it taught him an awful lot. He was very pedantic about food and things like that, but he'd actually, what isn't known was in Arnhem, and I went to the memorial, the 70th, last year, because my father died in May last year from cancer. And in the September they had the 70th memorial. So I went along with 2 coachloads of veterans, included some Chelsea pensioners who were quite characters. And in fact, when we needed to get through customs that quickly, but they used to dress in their red uniform and sit in the front of the coach, you know, so we could get waved through quickly. And then even I took them to McDonald's, which was an interesting thing in itself. But my father had always also been worried about returning there to Arnhem, basically because he felt a lot of people died as a consequence of them being there, the British. So he felt that a lot of the Arnhem people would be very against the British soldiers. But in fact they were in awe, and at that memorial service I met so many Dutch families. They put flags out on their houses, and in fact there seems to be more respect there and involvement of the town for the war veterans than I do see in England in the way they are honoured every year. Also they have children that are given responsibility for each war grave there in Arnhem, and it's the most goosebumpy ceremony that you could ever experience, because the children come in silently and lay flowers at the grave they're responsible for. But during that drop, they were surrounded, the supplies were going out of the line, so my father in his diary just talks about being hungry and food all the time. He then got wounded, which in effect saved his life, and he then became a prisoner of war and did that. So Dad had quite a tough time, but he then went in with the army, was in the intelligence corps, he learned Arabic. I speak a little Arabic now as well. And then he got into the diplomatic service. My mother was the driving force there from Wolverhampton. There must be something in the water in Wolverhampton. I'm pretty certain now. There's so many similarities. But, you know, my father thought, you know, with the Foreign Office or security, you know, oh, I can't do that. That's for people that have been to Oxford, Cambridge, etc. My mother was always, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get. Go for it. And he actually got in. So, and he sort of did accountancy, and we went to various embassies. But their first posting was to Nepal. And they had this belief with them when they were in Kenya initially, that we weren't going to go to boarding schools in England or anything. they believed in us being educated in the country in the local schools. So in Nepal, my friends were Nepalese, Tibetans, refugees in this school in Kathmandu. So we did a fantastic O-level there called hygiene. And I say that for a really good reason, because you learned how to build toilets, latrines. I'm very good at doing that. And also how to look for food, stopping mosquitoes, etc., like that. And afterwards, in Nepal, you did your O-levels in November, and my parents got posted to Cambodia during the war, so we're looking 1972, 73, 74. And so they went with that. They said, oh, well, you'll go and learn French, do the baccalaureate. But because of the war, that was a slight major problem. So in the end, I went back and they put me into boarding, or put me in, registered me for boarding school in Darlington. Hence the Darlow mums in 999 are very close to me, because I was in Darlington for 2 years. But with that, there were about 6 months. Now, I'd always thought I'd like to work in science laboratories or in the hospital. I've got that leaning, because I'd seen a lot of sort of different deprivation in Nepal and was quite socially aware about it and uncomfortable. And so we went to Nepal. After Nepal, we went to Cambodia in the March with the war going on. Phnom Penh was ring-fenced at the time by the Khmer Rouge. And in the aircraft going in from Bangkok to Phnom Penh, believe me, there was only about 4 or 5 people on that flight, because no one was going into this active war zone. Now the British and the British embassies were famed for, and some of the others said, as soon as they start saying no children, no wives, we evacuate our embassies. We've got this sort of backbone, sort of stalwart, we're the last people to go. So I went into this environment, and I couldn't sit there really, because there was lots of people out on the streets, camping, people had come into that city. And you also had, it was a weird war, because you had families sort of completely separated, some fighting on the Khmer Rouge side, some fighting for the government. And that's where I became aware of politics, first time. Because at the time, Sihanouk, who was then the sort of in charge of the country, he was basically allowing them to use this Ho Chi Minh Trail for the north to the south Vietnam. The Americans were against it in that sense, and at that time there was a lot of bombardment and toing and froing. So he was ousted, Sihanouk, and this has caused some of the things of the government, the Khmer Rouge coming in. But basically, we had this situation with the refugees in town, in Phnom Penh itself. There was a refugee camp, and I just said to my mum, I can't sit here. There's very few aid workers here. People can't get in. I did do this O-level. I know how to build toilets, and I went to work at the refugee camp. I looked after 30 families. That was my responsibility. Very few nurses out there. And Kwashiorkor, the starvation, where you get the belly pot. And there were lots of children there, and I thought, oh, that's like for my, they're starving. And there was babies, and I saw this baby, and there was one camp doctor in this huge, massive camp. And I took this baby, and there were masses around queues, and this doctor said to me, oh, this baby is not worth, hasn't got a hope, and stamped the baby. And that meant that that baby would not be given anything. We had measles came in the camp. It wiped out most of the children and babies in the camp. I looked after, this is an emotional one for me, but I looked after these families if you can imagine, you didn't have the middle tier, the mothers or the fathers. They were out either fighting on one or other side. You had grandparents and you had babies and children. And those, with a lot of children died. In some of my families, we used to give an egg. We used to give an egg each for each child, and you would give enough basic provisions, that fish and protein fish, to each family. But if the children died, then you rationed the grandparents to a half a cup of rice a week. And so you knew what you were doing. It was actually, you were having to feed those that could survive, and you knew could survive. And this was quite tremendous at the age of 17. It shaped my life. I saw total injustice. I saw governments giving aid that was either drugs that weren't being used in the West, this was supposed aid. The British loved giving tents, but they hadn't taken into account part of this area, these grounds, was flooded. And so mosquitoes were rife there. We got the nets up. I knew how to protect on that. I got the swimming pool drained. Again, because we had dengue fever as well as malaria, and all of these were just killing that population. But as soon as you have people dying, more were coming into this camp. So I saw lots of children die. I saw lots of grandparents die for a war that wasn't theirs. So as you can imagine, at 17, you want to go out and you want to fight the world because of the injustice that's going on. And that's where it's been a driver for me all my life so far, and it continues to be that driver. If I see injustice, it does react in me. From that, I will say, a point in mind, one particular day, they would have rockets coming in. They come in threes, and we had this in a larder with sandbags around, and that's where you would head as soon as the first rocket hit from the Khmer Rouge. We went in there and we got this old field phone, and the embassy, my father had realised the rockets had come in on us and in our area. So I could hear the phone going, and I just said to my mum, look, I just need to get that phone in so we can let them know we're all right with me today when I reflect, when I recall it. And you just want to stop. I wanted to stop the war. I wanted to stop the madness. So I came back to boarding school in England. I was pretty lethal. As a sixth former, you went to the head of the table, and you had these young children in front of you, and you were supervising their meals. Well, anyone left a morsel, even with my own children. And my children said to me, well, if you think so much about this, Mum, why don't you pack it up and send it to them? Not realising, but food, and I look at food banks we've got today, it's sort of aspects like this, you think this is not right, what we are in. So that is really what has driven me. I've worked also with war veterans. I worked at St Dunstan's. I decided I wanted to be a nurse. So I worked with disabled. I then did my nursing at Guy's Hospital and worked in Bermondsey. Did community nursing. I'll cut this. I then went travelling around the world for several years. Worked in various I was after war zones because I wanted to go in and help refugees. I tried to get in a very famous camp outside of Beirut, which actually was surrounded by in Beirut with the Christians around. It was a Palestinian camp. So I tried to get in there to help with doing refugee work. My father could never trust where I was in the world. He often used to see where there's a war zone, then I'm going to be near it, or trying to get in to try and support, because I was at that time a trained nurse. Came back to England, trained as a health visitor, where I learned a lot about, people think health like they do with the NHA, but actually you're looking at health inequalities, and all aspects affects that, education, housing, and a lot of these things I dealt with as a health visitor. and the implications of poor wage salaries, no jobs, those sort of things on welfare of people. And so we had a fantastic report, I don't know if you recall it, the Black Report. It was quite, this was looking at the 1980s, anyone that recalls it. And it was about the inequalities and about ways forward. Well, we've had several governments since. And in fact, what we're seeing is, the inequalities go, the divide go greater and increasing than actually coming together. And so, and actually giving opportunity to people. So that's an element. And then, of course, Julian's gone through in huge detail about what happened with the hospital. But can I just say this? Once I knew A&E was going to be decreasing in its hours in Stafford, I knew this was the first chink of other services going. And that was my fear. And this fear has become a reality. And now we're on this ball game of losing services. In addition, I'm really worried, and I will say this now, in 10 years' time, we will not have a hospital in Stafford if we do not act and stop what's happening now.
Thank you. So, and you feel as an independent that you can make that difference?
Yes, I do feel that, because as what I've become, again, with the campaign, we've become very politically aware, irrespective. We started off apolitical, and it worked wonders, and Support Stafford Hospital was very successful. But you begin to start learning. I mean, I used to be with Labour, I'll say this now, and was very supportive of it over that time, and actually was a Labour councillor. But you begin to learn about the history of the NHS as you get into this. I hadn't got into the depth of it before. I always remember with it the purchaser provider split, and you couldn't understand how that could work in a sensible way. But then you begin to look at the history, you begin to look at what successive governments have done or not done to secure the NHS. I totally believe in the NHS. I will fight tooth and nail for it because I've travelled the world, seen how good our service is, and it's something that we do treasure publicly, but it's been totally taken away and undermined before our very eyes, and that's been happening for the last 25 years. And I, therefore, do not trust governments, the politicians. That's why I say I don't do politics, because politics, to me, has become where you have to follow the party whip. People are putting their political parties before actually representing people in their towns. And I think it's time we had a complete change of politics. We go either from the Conservatives or to Labour, or back and forth. And you see that the grounds are built up by one, and the other takes it on at a faster speed, the Conservatives. So no political party here, between the two main ones, they've all contributed to what's happening to our NHS. And I think it's time that people around the country, instead of this party whips, without this representation, we started changing it and start changing politics around the country. We've had enough of it. I've had enough of it. And I'm sorry, I do not trust any party with the NHS. I trust us. I trust the people in Stafford. I trust the people in our communities around. That's who I trust to make decisions. And I think, why not? We've got certain things that are happening, because I've looked wider than the health agenda in Stafford. For instance, education here in Stafford. How many realise that there's been 90% cuts to the funding to schools? This has gone under the radar. I'm not going to say I know everything on different things, but I'm doing my research and homework. There's one thing I'm good at is researching and doing that aspect. I'm meeting people out there in Stafford now, and I'm seeing these other areas that haven't actually been properly represented by our current MP, definitely. They should have been out there in actually protecting the services. The education for our children is important. It's important for the future. And the university fees, I've got 3 sons, and they've been going through this system. It's extortionate what those children coming out from university are expected to pay and have this weight above them of what they're going to owe. It should have been free. That's what a lot of us enjoyed, and there are ways to get that money and to have that money to pay for the public services. The other area that I've begun to investigate, and this is where Julian said, you know, we had a 9 million deficit at Stafford, which was then engineered by the government in order to have this process we went through, and it's currently being engineered. Why did maternity services be taken away? It wasn't because of a failing maternity department. It was because they've taken away the anaesthetists that support, well, we're going to be taking emergency surgery, and that supports a proper, fully functioning A&E service. But it's why our consultant-led maternity has had to go and go up to Stoke. At the same time you see that, then on Friday I was watching the debate on a referendum for the HS2. And it was most interesting because I was seeing backbenchers on both sides arguing against HS2 and with the money involved, and it was really interesting. Frank Dobson actually gave a very good account of the opinion polls around the country, showing that people are actually against it. The Conservative backbenchers were arguing about how much money it was costing. The board of the Institute and directors are against it. It's not value for money. And yet people don't realise how much is being spent on this big white elephant. It's 50 billion. And to do the actual cross-rail and infrastructure for it, it's going to be about 28 billion, they estimate. These are rising costs. Well, isn't it better to have that money, rather than going in that, be spent on our public services and actually go where it will actually meet and support public services, the health services, our education, our welfare. You know, welfare has been put as a dirty word out there. It isn't. It supports real people with disabilities. We see this with our hospital, what we're campaigning for. People have disabilities, chronic illness. They're expected now to go up to Stoke for a lot of services. You know, Stafford is what's called transport, public transport, and transport deprived, because about 30 to 40% of people don't have access to a private car. They're having to use and depend on public services, which in some of the rural areas, they might see a bus once a day. And the cost is, what, £50 or something for a taxi from Stoke? What about the mother as well, who had a premature baby up in Stoke? She's really worried that she might get that phone call saying, you need to be here. She's got other children, she's a single parent. How is she going to get there? Will she be there on her biggest fear? She won't make it if her baby's dying. You know, so we've got these real serious issues, and I feel there's been an absolute absence of the politicians in helping us fight for the Stafford Hospital and what's happening around. Why not do away with these big projects that people don't want? And why don't we have a democratic voice in this country? Why don't we have a referendum? Why don't referendums become not just on a national scale, on a smaller one, you know, where you operate in Stafford? I want the opportunity to represent the views, not my views, not any party's views. It will be the people of Stafford's views in Parliament. And I want an opportunity, because both parties haven't done us fair in that Parliament, with calling us, we are the most maligned through this 3 years that you have ever come across, where they've told lies about it, and those lies haven't been contradicted by our MP. They should have been. No one's been brave, actually, to challenge some of those statements. And there are people here setting the record straight. And I think I would love the opportunity to stand in Parliament and set the record straight on Stafford once and for all. And I think also this Francis report does need a review on what was done, because it was engineered to actually undermine not just Stafford Hospital, but also the NHS. It was the thin edge of the wedge to undermine the NHS, and that's how it's been used. So I'm an angry person. I'm sorry, I promise not to rant.
No.
I end up getting...
I think you have passion. Right, I am conscious of the time, but I think we've listened to
We've
such
talked too much.
interesting debate. So we have one or two types of questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got some here, but if you want to turn to the audience,
Yeah.
that'd be
Anybody
great.
got any questions I'd like to ask?
I get the impression, because when you're talking, that most of the audience are all your supporters anyway.
I don't know everything.
You don't know? Oh, right, okay, right. Right, so is there any questions? Well, should we just, is anybody? Go to this, right, okay. So now you are looking at being in Parliament, we're going to get some questions in regards to that. So I'll actually, it says the current government has made bold statements over the validity, sorry, I need my glasses, it's been prepared, thank you, of the trade union strikes actions, where ballots have had small turnouts. Do you believe that there should be a minimum turnout before a ballot is valid? And would you apply the same principle to an election ballot?
I think any ballot, you would, if you actively had a small one, it's about actually going out there and asking people, I think, increasing that knowledge immediately to get that perspective and in having people's views. So it shouldn't be just the one measure that you're looking at. I think there's other measures where you can evaluate if you've got a small turnout. Because what you're trying to do is trying to get that representation. And it's one of the areas, like with referendums, etc. I think the more you begin to engage and involve people in the process, in what's happening, and inform them, as we've seen here, because people will say, let's say, a referendum, or getting these ballots, will people actually know how that's going to affect them? What are the pros and cons? And I think what was interesting with the Scottish referendum was that there was a very informed debate that started going on for pro and cons. And I think that is what would be needed for the future, where you would go out more to actually seek that.
It's simple. If you're talking about union votes, for instance, at the end of the day, everybody has a chance to vote. It's quite simple to vote. They do need to change the rules on we need to catch up. Yeah, but we need to catch up with technology. Everybody should be able to vote. They've all got apps on the phone. You should be able to just vote there and then. That would massively increase it. Now, if you don't vote, if you have 200 people vote out of 10,000, that's the fault of the other 9,000 whatever people that didn't vote. If you've got a majority of those 200, then that action goes as simple as that, because that's the way our system works. If you get voted into Parliament, that's how you get voted in. There should be no quota. No quota at all.
So the other thing is, I'm just going to say about unions. I think unions, we've seen a pendulum swing, because I actually thought with Stafford Hospital, I wanted the unions to come out more, to have more support. I think there's been very much over the years something where unions have lost their teeth a bit in how seriously and etc. they've been taken. I think that I would have liked to see unions, not UNISON itself, but other unions come out more in support of the staff at the hospital.
But I think the Royal College of Nursing has been
appalling.
weak.
I'm going to say that used to be a member of it as well.
They have been weak, and you very rightly, somebody says they are not classed, they come under the umbrella of the union,
They do.
but they're not a trade union,
No.
as they're not officially,
No.
do you know what I mean? And yes, you're right, they did come out poorly. UNISON and Unite and the unions have really tried to, have been a great supporter of Staffordshire. And I also went up there as a part of my presidency to support and help. Because understanding as a nurse, how it must feel that people, because I was hearing that people, when they were going through to work, were being spat at.
Yes, absolutely.
And
It's
can you imagine that? And yet, through all that, they carried on.
They were
They carried
unbelievable.
on.
And,
Yeah.
you know, going to that march, because I organised the march for the, you know, the 50,000, I'd organised it like when Julian said he came across the staff in Asda. The reason is, we hadn't told them what we were going to do. And we got an area marked out in the square for the staff to come into through an alleyway from Asda. And I just wanted to know, with various stewards, when they were arriving there. It's the idea then, and which we did, and it's goosebumpy as well, in the fact of them saying 3 cheers to the hospital staff. Those staff came in to an overwhelming cheer from the crowds, and they were in tears. They were in that, all of us were actually. Certainly I was getting worried about, my God, the square's getting very full, I've got to get people marching out now, you know, but it was an unbelievable day for that reason, and it was a way that we could support and congratulate the staff. And they have done us proud, how they've stuck through thick and thin with everything being thrown at them. And, you know, it's hats off to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an NHS worker, certainly.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other questions was about Stafford is a county town of Staffordshire, but services such as hospitals and universities have gone or are rapidly diminishing and being moved to Stoke. There is a huge increase in the amount of new housing being built in the town, so surely services should be maintained or increased and not decreased. How are you going to ensure that there is access to the right services for the people of Stafford and the surrounding villages without having to travel to and from Stoke?
It's actually beginning to, again, work. I know we have been working with various groups and parties, but one of the groups or areas that's been very deficient is the county council here. And they have done very little in the way of supporting, and they've been instrumental in this because a lot of money lies in there, in how they divvy it up and what they're doing with sort of local support services, etc. We have these health and well-being boards for the future. So that is going to be an all-encompassing health and social care. And it's to that sort of table that you would begin to look at these issues to address people that need the services, as well as bringing up the support system to enable them to have access and speedy access to those services. It's also working with the hospital. Now, some of these meetings are being held behind the scenes to us. We've been trying to get in on them to actually make them see sense about what they're actually doing and what services can be provided. I think we have to begin to look at the arguments going forward and actually possibly establishing something in Parliament, because you can develop various committees that can scrutinise certain areas and in various, and they come up with good reports, and getting it across party where they will actually investigate and properly make sure funding and support, because we've got this closure of services going on around the country, not just in Stafford. So it's a national problem where there has to be better funding coming in as well. At present we're seeing a lot of money wasted in big white elephant projects, for example, or in the mechanisms of the health service, like the internal provider purchaser split. Let's get those changed, let's get the money that's from that, and we need to reinvest in public services and do that via these boards, the health and social well-being boards, but also putting the pressure on the services to meet these needs. Why not get the MOD involved? Because we're going to have a lot of MOD coming here to Stafford, and they need to look after the welfare of their servicemen and families. So we haven't had their voices being very quiet from them.
Simple to me. Really,
We always get
really. No, seriously, it is simple. It's we want services in this town, okay? the services that are looked after by the council, primary care, I understand, is that right? That they scrutinise primary care. We give out the money for social services, etc. by the council. And then you've got the NHS budget, which is controlled now by the CCGs. Now, the biggest problem we're going to have now is that the CCGs that are taken over is not our own anymore. All the commission is going to be done from Stoke. We've lost University to Stoke, we've lost our services to Stoke, and they're controlling it. They've got no budget for care in the community. We need to get rid of all that. This one thing that Labour might be looking at is the whole of the health system should be looked at. It should be money together. Absolutely. It's got to be integrated. And we talk about integration. It's got to be controlled, because if you're going to have care in the community, it's got to be controlled by one person, one body, or one area. That could be resolved quite simply. We've got loads of room outside Stafford Hospital because we've been camping on it. Right? We've got Cannock Hospital half empty. If you took, there's 40% empty wards on Cannock Hospital. If you turn those into little flat areas for it's mainly frail and elderly, isn't it? Okay, say you turn all them into little flat areas. So they come out of the wards, they get into, because they say they can't go in, nursing on site, they're self-sufficient, they've got their own areas, that gets them back into the community, then they move. If they're well enough, they go back into the community. If they're not well, they're right next to the hospital. You could build something like that right next to the hospital.
It's basically the integrated care system is the step up, step down model. But I think I need to actually say at this stage, there's this, and I'm going to say this, there's the myth of the elderly. And in the BMJ, they did a really good article on this. Now, I've worked for 10 years in health and social care with elderly. And what's not being recognised, they talk about this bigger burden, etc., coming at us, and that we should prepare for that. But what you're seeing is a transition. When I first started working in health and social care for the elderly and with dementia, you would get people in their homes that were possibly around 80 that had dependencies. Now, we're seeing people about 90 coming into care or needing support. People are actually living much healthier lifestyles. You know, public health services are a very important aspect, you know, building up people's lifestyles. But in reality, I've actually seen it in place where we've seen this transition go. So your 70-year-olds, you think, you know, 10, 20 years ago, 70 was considered quite old. It's not now. It's young old. And people are actually being independent. But where we're not seeing the money for, and this again is why these health and wellbeing boards are going to be very important. Yeah, we've got young one over. But why those are so important is actually you do need a mechanism to mix. I do believe in the social care side as well as the health side, that integration has to be done. But again, we've met problems with the CCG holding the purse strings, because the whole idea of it is you meet the needs of your population and actually provide and work with the social services to build that up. So basically, they have not been getting, they've got the money, but again, it's been underfunded. And what really concerns me, there's two things that concern me. There is an element where we've seen this, where a person will hold with the care bill, they will hold their own money, and aspects like that for care. I cannot see that working in practice when you're looking at cross-board services, where you need to have the amalgamation. The community services are not getting the funding that they need. So the more you get that, but at the same time, a big danger with that, and what the health service is worried about, that once those two services join, you've got this bigger pot. What's not recognised, social services and social care, I've experienced this in the work I've done, there's no money there.
It's underfunded.
Completely. And if you haven't got that there, that's where are they going to get the resources for that? So again, nationally what we're seeing is a big problem of underfunding. If you're going to have care in the community, if you're going to have the money following individuals, then, and also, don't forget carers. Carers are the most undervalued people out there. They're on minimum, well, less than minimum wage. They're on basic wage. They could earn more going to Tesco's. It's absolutely appalling. And the standards of the whole way to the NHS with bed blocking and how they need to, we need to get people out there in the community or support them in the community. We need to support the carers, because those carers are, again, like the health service staff I've come across, dedicated individuals. You know, again, they've been maligned in the press, but there's an awful lot of them working on dementia units that I hold my hat off to, that they do that job, yet they know they could go to Tesco's stacking shelves and get far more money. It just does not make sense. So we need to reorganise how we fund, get better funding for Staffordshire. The money we get is disproportionate to other areas. Why? We should have equal funding.
You should have equal funding, but ultimately the town needs to do something for itself. We need to stand up for ourselves in
Yeah,
some respects we do. But just a little thing. The police station that was closed at Weeping Cross, been empty for an awful long time. I prefer if the council, and I don't know the laws about it, if you actually just built your own estate, your own houses, your own. In fact, what you need up there is low-level housing with a chemist and a surgery in the middle for an elderly population, so it's all self-contained. Sell it all off, reinvest the money into some social housing, and actually get the council, and it's got reserves as well, but to get the council to start generating its own businesses, making the money back out of it. That's prime location. They don't need to sell it off to anybody else. The county council have a plan to sell off every single county council owned building. They're going to put them on the market, sell them all off, and then rent back all the properties that they're going to go into. It's so short term, you know, that they're going to sell every crown jewel that we've got, and then we're going to be renting them. It sounds to me like a disaster like the PFI situation. We're going to end up spending all this money renting buildings off them again. It's just like absolutely mental. So that instead of doing that and losing all the money, they could be redeveloping the town centres with their own money. We could be generating our own social housing with our own money. We could be then putting people in who are paying rent back to ourselves, who then part pay rent, part pay to the capital. They take on the houses, and then we move on to the next section. The council should work, and it's always as businessmen are doing this, it should be able to work like that. It should be able to create wealth for the town. It's not a poor town, and we've got a high percentage of older people, so therefore we should make sure that the town is designed for those elderly people, so they've got healthcare close by, not in Stoke, not a million miles away, healthcare locally, keep them locally, keep them well. They're going to have lots of old people coming back down into our hospital very quickly after they've had a surgery up there. They're going to go back out into the community, they're going to be ill, and they're going to go back in again, and it's going to be a challenge.
I have to say on this, I would argue for mixed housing, because what I discovered with the work I've done, that if you've got, with some of the homes that we had, and you know, building what these are sort of mini villages with elderly, a lot of the elderly didn't want to move in there because it's elderly. They like a mix.
You can have a mix, but it's sort of a small area. You've got the whole of Weeping Cross, you've got the co-op, the pub and everything else. There's loads of young people, but you need to revamp and regenerate the land, make some money, and then play it back in again. We need to be developing the town and pushing the town. We don't want services going away. There's no reason why they should be going to Stoke and the university. And if need be, we should set up our own blooming university. There's no reason why we couldn't do a specialist university, get it going with Rod Baston and start JCB and get some money and make our own university. And instead of doing all, do something different, do some different degrees, you know, that'll fit in with it. Make it specialist engineering and then link in with JCB.
But part of that as well is because we talk about the elderly a lot, but what gets neglected here is the young people.
Well, we're on to that. Let's close every youth club in the town. That's a fantastic idea, that is. It only costs you $500,000 a year to look after all the kids. Let's just get rid of it. $500,000. They spend that on their expenses, on bloody coffee teas and bollards and balls outside the county council building. 20 balls of them, and we could have had every youth club. We could have more youth clubs.
So where the people that are being neglected here are the young people as well. You know, you go through, some people go through university with a great big debt on them. But equally, we should value apprenticeships in the skilled areas as well, because I found, like with my son, when he was 14, 16, there were a lot of people in his class, boys, they didn't want to go through the academic, yet they were being forced through the academic. And what wasn't realised or being recognised or valued was the vocational courses. Yet, you know, we need to begin to treat those on a similar level. Apprenticeships and those vocational courses should be treated the same. But equally, we need to have those opportunities for young people. They come out, they're absolutely disillusioned because they can't get on the job ladder. And it's absolutely appalling what we're doing to our younger generation. Not only can they not get a job, they can't afford a house or to get on that ladder. And then, you know, they're going to be damned for quite a number of years in actually having to pay a university fee or an education fee.
So, right, all this sounds absolutely idealistic and I love it, but how are you going to fund it?
Funding, well, I'll do some on this one. Funding.
And I think that's the last question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then I've got a couple of very quick questions which have been sent to me.
Basically,
My prerogative.
I get really irritated with this when they say that we have to invest in the NHS. No, you don't. You change what is happening in the NHS. If you got rid of the purchaser-provider split, you would save billions. If you stopped this outsourcing and actually made it more direct, you would get rid of this tendering process. The money would be far more than 2.5 billion. It would be excesses of billions. If you stop the HS2, these, you know, it seems like they'll fund one thing, but everyone's gunning for an HS2. That's how many billions there? Use the money better, reinvent, re-establish services, but re-establish your funding. And by getting rid of that internal market, that's what I want to hear. Renegotiate the PFIs. Billions. You know, for a sort of PFI loan, they're having to pay back billions. Stoke is in debt because of that. And this is around the country. Why are we outsourcing all the time? Why not have proper employment going on? And stop the agency work that goes on. You know, like Perkins. I mean, I know that a large part of that workforce is actual agency. You know, and it's time we change this and got a whole restructuring for financing. And if you change those structures, you will save a lot of money. We should be investing, like with the nurse shortage, the doctor shortage, everything we've got at present. I'm going to show my age now. About 20 years ago, there was actually a long-term plan, part of the foundation, Health Foundation, was set up to actually look long-term at workforce planning in the NHS. That's somewhere gone.
I remember it.
Do you remember it?
I do, yeah.
And so, what's happened to that? Because if we actually invested and that investment had gone on to actually follow what it was saying, we would have not had the problem we've got at present in the shortage of NHS staff.
It was
Now,
part of the modernisation.
So, if you break it down, you're talking about big concepts. If you break it down, say to this town, and you said to this town, we want A&E overnight. Actually, A&E generates money because it's your doorway and it creates your money. We worked out that if we actually opened A&E overnight, with the generation of income that it could, we'd be £100,000 short. I'm sure that everybody in this town, if they wanted to pay an extra £1.30 on their council tax over a year, that the council would give that money back to the hospital and we'd have an A&E overnight. That would be a simple thing to do. And we haven't had a tax rise in Stafford for years now. That's great. If you, oh yeah, you haven't had to pay any extra, I'd rather pay £1.30 extra and have my A&E overnight. If you go to the university and you went, right, you're doing a 3-year course, £9 for your first year, you get at the end of it, my lad's got a first. I said, that's brilliant, son, that's really pleased. He said, that ain't the problem, Dad. He said, that doesn't count towards my degree at all. The first year, nothing. It doesn't matter what he's done in his first year. I said, hang on a second, I've paid £9, or you're going to pay £9, and your accommodation, so you don't have anything. After the first year, there's nothing. You've come home at Christmas, you've come home, you've finished in Easter, you've gone back for 6 hours of exams, and I've paid £9, and you're off now till October. He went, yeah. Why not condense the degree into 2 years, charge at Stafford University, charge £6,000, because why are they charging £9,000 a year for all this? I mean, why has every university suddenly decided they can charge the full amount? Why aren't there universities out there that are charging £6,000 a year?
Self-directed.
You cannot tell me that it costs that much money to run a university. It absolutely can't cost that much money. It can't be costing every single person. So we could run our own university, and I tell you what, it'd be one of the fullest universities in the whole of the country. And what's going to happen when the university goes? All those people at Western Road that rent out houses, they're buggered. There aren't enough people here to rent them, so they're going to lose that income. So all of them, those houses, the house price drops, you're going to lose that income. Western Road, all the sports facilities, everything else up there, it's simple logic. You're taking away that. Poor old nightlife in Stafford on a Tuesday night, it's going to be shafted. We're going to lose all the bars, staff close the pubs, close the restaurants, and the kebab shop's only going to open on a Friday and Saturday night, and suddenly it's all collapsing in on itself. It absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. You've got thousands of people up there. You take away the hospital, all the services at the hospital, the news agents suffer. They're saying we've got 91% of people going into hospital. That ain't true. That ain't. They've taken away off all the services. I tell you what, the taxi people will be quite happy because they've got to go all the way up to Stoke. But how often they're going to do that? It's a few times. The local taxi drivers, the local economy will suffer. People that I moved here because it had a great hospital, as far as I'm concerned, before I got here. It was a great hospital, got great services. I could get to Birmingham, I could get to Manchester. It was great. It was in the middle. They got great services, got university.
Well, one of the things on a practical level, you know, looking locally with the hospital group, you know, because this is a prime focus as well, is they're expecting to have orthopaedic surgery, right, which is a money earner, you know, when it's elected. And so if you've got that, and you've got anaesthetists there for the majority of the day, why not, with more of the networking model with Stoke, actually bring that up where we've got consultant-led maternity back, where we've got the emergency service, to back up not just the locally, but the health economy, because at present it's not coping. There's a report that's out there called the KMPG report about a health economy that's in distress. They're not publishing it. Why? Because it's actually thrown a big spanner in the works on the finances of the CCG. I think they've been charged as dysfunctional, but they're not letting that be known. And yet that would actually put cold water on what their plans are, what has been fundamentally directing the closure of our services to go up to Stoke. It's because the CCG earn the money to actually commission the services, but they're not commissioning the services that our population is demanding. It doesn't make sense. So we've got a CCG that's not doing what it's supposed to do for the services in our community. So I would be looking to somehow get rid of their power and get it into a body or a board where they will actually properly represent the needs, the health needs of this community. And we need to actually have that networking model, because Stafford is important. It will support all the other services and the A&E departments, the other emergency surgery departments that need that support in the wider health economy. It's proved vital already, not just for that, but for maternity, consultant-led maternity. Because those midwives have reported that they've had pregnant mums coming from Stoke and from other areas to Stafford Hospital. So why not have this? Again, it's short-sighted. It's tunnel vision, and tunnel vision according to what they're being directed by government to do. It's not saying, actually, this is the practical solution for this health economy, and taking that into consideration. And the fiscal argument can be sorted if you actually restructure the NHS in the way it was and how we go
Don't
forward.
restructure, no top-down restructuring the NHS. No,
as a nurse that's working in the
It's
NHS.
building on what works now, and it's strong, but building on that and getting rid of these stupid interfaces like the purchase providers.
Absolutely. Now, Steve.
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick questions. What do you feel is more important, reducing the deficit or reducing the number of people relying on food banks? And second question, Stafford is facing an increase in council tax but a reduction in frontline services. At what point, if any, do austerity policies become part of the problem rather than the solution?
Right. Which was the first one? Can I answer?
You can answer.
The first one was, what's more important, reducing the deficit or reducing the number of people relying on food banks?
Reducing the deficit. Reducing...
The-
Well, actually, I think that our duty is towards people. You know, we have to actually, the deficit is something that's been sort of made up as well in a certain way. Because actually, it's something that since I knew I was going to stand, right, I've been reading on various economic theories, and Julian Porter here, I know, but I wanted to get to understand, and it's linked with the second question, these austerity measures. Because actually, you know, leading economists are now saying that actually this severe austerity does not work. And actually, I think it's appalling that we're not just providing the basics in life of good food, of people having jobs, and having not relying on food banks and proper welfare services. It's proven that austerity does not work, and the deficit is actually something that has, you know, again, I think those figures need working on and looking at more, because I'm not quite certain from what I've read that that deficit is actually the real deficit we've been led to believe. And like we've seen in Greece, I love what's happened in Greece. You know, austerity by these economists I've been reading and that are of the avant-garde are saying, actually, if you want to grow an economy, you actually stop this harsh austerity cuts. It doesn't actually support economic growth in the longer term. And actually, that's what we're about for the future. And to enable and get, the UK, well, England is a thriving economy. And I know Julian with his business hat on, he'll come at another round.
No, I won't. Oh, just a simple answer. You've got to feed people first. We shouldn't have food banks in this day and age. We've got enough food in the whole of the world to feed everybody. It's just a stupid question in that respect. And no offence to the person that sent it in. You make sure you look after every human being. We shouldn't have food banks.
As a basic right, as a developed country, it's absolutely ridiculous we're in that situation with food banks. You know, that shouldn't be happening in this day and age.
There's something wrong with food. The whole austerity thing, that's a different argument. It shouldn't be food banks whether we've got austerity or not. This is absolutely disgusting.
But part of having the food banks because of the austerity is because services have been cut.
Quite simply,
have been cut as well.
Quite simply, when you go through a recession, when you're in business, is when you invest. You invest at those times. You're getting cheap money. You invest then. You don't cut. You invest. What's been good about this about this last recession? One thing that has been good, and the companies like JCB and other companies tried not to lay people off. The workforce went in and said, look, why don't we all go down to 4 days? That way, we don't lay off loads of people. We all keep working. We all keep earning. They didn't go in and go, right, you 200, you're last in, bog off. They actually turned around and said, let's do 4 days each. That was fantastic. That was sharing it. That's it. We're in it together. When you've got people at the top who earn £1 million a year, they're not in it together. You know, that's not on. Costas, Google, Amazon, the corporate tax situation. How can a company like Costas only pay 30,000 corporate tax when my company, who hardly makes any money at all, will pay the same? I turn over £500,000 a year. They turn over £80 million, £100 million, £200 million, whatever they're turning over. That's what's wrong. You know, that's. What was the second question?
No.
When does austerity become part of the problem rather than the solution? We're facing an increase in council tax, but a reduction in frontline services.
We're not facing an increase in council tax, all because our
the council,
the county council, will raise it by 1.95%, so it's just under the government threshold.
Okay, but in real terms, we've had no rises for a number of years, haven't we?
Borough again.
A normal person, doesn't matter if it's the borough or the council, the person who gets your council tax hasn't actually paid anything more in the past couple of years.
No, we haven't paid any more, and we haven't had any pay rises. And when you say that you guys, the NHS workers and union people, and ambulance staff were going out on strike tomorrow because they weren't even given the 1% that they were supposed to be given. and the hypocrisy of seeing MPs taking
Oh,
lemon.
no.
We all agree.
Absolutely appalling.
It's disgusting. Someone who's not believe right on the streets. You know, having a blooming strike is soft compared to what should be. They should go into Parliament, sit there and go, no way, you're not having 11%. We're only getting 1%.
And it's also like,
striking though, aren't they? Because they'll still go out.
well, it's like company bosses.
They won't strike.
No.
Company bosses.
An emergency happens,
Yeah.
they'll still go.
I'm one of the strikers as such.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, though, the last time we did 4 hours, we said to the managers, because we made sure that the patients were going to be, that if anything happened, because we're on the picket line, we go back in. And that's what we do. We make sure that it's that everything is covered, emergencies, basically anything, you know. And there was midwives for the first time ever actually went on strike.
They did the Royal College of Midwives.
Yeah.
And to be honest, for a Royal College to actually
Absolutely.
do that means it's actually significantly
Yeah.
bad. But I also, what we have seen in the NHS as well, especially with looking at what's going on, we have got a real problem with these executives like Mark Hackett and people, because they have come, if you look at their history, they've all been in charge of these failing hospitals. And yet they fail in one area and seem to dust themselves down and be picked by Monitor or NHS England or, you know, to go in and do another wonderful job, shall I put in inverted commas, at another hospital. So we've got failed chief executives that are earning huge amounts of money. And why should we be rewarding, like in the banking system and the big corporations, why should we be rewarding them for actually making a bad job to get them moved on? They're paid huge amounts in redundancy money. It just seems ridiculous. So, you know, there has to be something done about this divide. And, you know, going to the austerity as well and the tax issue, because I think a lot of parties are against raising tax. It's a big no-no across the board. But at the end of the day, there should be a fair tax system between the wealthy and those that haven't got such good income. Because actually that 1% should be paying more tax, as far as I'm concerned. But also, at this stage, while we're in this transition, maybe we should be considering to support the NHS, especially with funding, with staff and getting training and the transition time, looking at a way to support that transition with possibly looking at a tax system until that happens, and then getting the fairer tax model across the board. But certainly we should go after those corporations that are not paying their taxes. It's ridiculous.
Okay,
Sorry,
I think
guys.
we're winding up, aren't we?
Yeah.
Now, Steve, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, yeah.
I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Julian Porter. I'd like to thank Karen Howell. And I'd like to thank Eleanor Smith. And thank you very much. This is the first of 4. We have Labour tomorrow night with Kate Godfrey, the Labour candidate and leader of the SCC opposition, John Taylor. On Thursday, we've got Mike Shone and Tom Harris from the Green Party. And on Friday, we have Jeremy Lefroy, the current MP, and Mike Elan recently resigned. Pardon? Yeah, that's what I'm just saying, yeah, he's resigned.
He's still allowed to go in.
Well, he's, Jeremy was invited to bring a guest, and that's who Jeremy's bringing. So, well, he didn't. They obviously didn't. He didn't want to bring Patrick Farrington, so he's bringing him. So,
could have brought Philip Atkins.
Philip Atkins was invited, but didn't respond to the. UKIP.
Well, in existence when
UKIP. We asked them via their website form, because that was the only way of contacting them, to advise us who their candidate was, and we're still waiting for a response.
It would be entertaining.
It would.
Well, we are thinking of doing the hustings in May, in April or May. We will be, we've got your email addresses, so we will be in touch to let you know when that's taking place. And we'll be in touch. Thanks very much for coming.
Excuse me, did I understand you to say you didn't know who lived in Parliament?
We organised this. We didn't know. We do now. But by the time Red declared it, we've got all these events organised.
Please,
No, Ravi Subramanian, who is UNISON's Regional Secretary, is doing it tomorrow night. Professor Mick Temple, lecturer in politics at Stafford University.
He's good, he is.
Why we invited? Because she's UNISON's, one of UNISON's NEC members, and she's one of UNISON's past presidents. They're all politics.
I thought you were going to get into grilling.
No, Eleanor was just Master's degrees, and then we've got Roger McKenzie, UNISON Assistant Secretary, coming forward, Jeremy. Well, she would have been, but yeah, but they've all got their own different specialisms, and I do think it's worked particularly well tonight.
Anyway. Me and Rowan, when we take on the council, we'll take over the
Well, yeah. Well, that's right, yeah, we're looking to do a hustings in April to bring them all together and have a, well, April or early May. Well, it will be April, yeah. And we will be doing that, but we didn't want to get into the adversarial, you know, the sound bites. And I think we've got a lot more than that tonight. We've got people's real histories, people's stories, and what's brought them to be involved. Absolutely. Thank you very much for coming.
No one else. So, we, as part of this paternity review, that paternity is actually going to be, I know, looking at.
Yeah, that's the way out. Yeah, thanks very much for coming.
Reevaluating these issues.
Thank you.
You know, and not around, but how can you transfer? And I think just like we're talking
Well, I get this about every venue that you go to, there is one.
Are you doing the full tidying tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll do it.
As long as it's got the milk.
are going to live in our children's room, not the smaller one. So again, teachers attended only one meeting out of 7. How can they, and they kept saying, well, these are our experts. What do you mean? So these are the announcements.
Not much longer. Oh, the owl's going nuts. Oh, God. Then this morning, it'll probably no, I'm not going to. No,
That's what we were told. And she got a CBE. And she does lecture tours all over the place.
We'll let you know it's on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
28. I just go to the loo.
Well, that's the drag I've been trying to do. It's down, I can't get rid of the chest. Are you there tonight? So if you did want to come, we'll keep it open Saturday night as well if you really want to. It's not a problem. You know. Listen, I'm not saying anything, but I've had 2 councillors sleeping in my tent. I've had, you've been in my own room sleeping, but you lay down in there. So you did, that's right.